I cannot begin to tell you how much I have been looking forward to this moment with the one and only Kirsten. So, everybody, we love that you're here. Whether you're with us live, whether you're watching this afterwards, uh, we're so happy to be here with you. Please send us hearts so that we know that you're with us. Otherwise, sometimes it feels like we're talking into a box. Um, and so, for those of you joining us now, this is Cocktails and Courageous Conversations. My name is Ricky. I'm a psychologist and act trainer, and sometimes I open up a little bar and hang out with people that are amazing. I know for Kirsten, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. You're probably not having a drink. I am. Everybody, whether you, we do not encourage drinking, but we do want to wrap this in a way that it's kind of just this two girls hanging out in a bar, having a casual conversation with all of our friends from all over the world, talking about something that we're passionate about. So warmly welcome to Kirsten. You are going to talk, like, we're going to talk about one of the things that is so important for everybody, and I think things sometimes for women in particular. And before we do that, Kirsten, tell us a little bit about, like, who are you? I know that's a big question.
Yes, it's a big question to start off with. First, thank you, Ricky. It's such an honor to be here and exciting, really. And of course, I'm also full of nerves. So, like
Oh,
Ricky said, sending the hearts and love. I love
send a
feeling
heart. Yeah.
that energy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm based in California in the United States. And let's see, I live in a small town in the Sierra Nevada foothills now. Worked for a number of years in the Bay Area. Um, and I've done so many different things, worked with a lot of different folks, worked with younger folks, families, adults, older adults, groups, individuals. Um, and recently, over the last 4 or so years, my passion has really been exploring and developing a more compassionate relationship with myself, with my body, and with food in particular. And that's what I love to do now. So I work part time at a company called Equip. They're a startup based here in California, but we serve clients all over the United States. And get to work from a model called family based therapy, which is a model developed for working with adolescents and young adults with eating disorders and working with the entire family to support them in their recovery journey. And so I do that part time, and then I have a part time private practice on the side. On the personal front, I'm a mother. I have a beautiful 8-year-old son, and a partner, a very supportive husband, who helped me feel less anxious being here this morning. So I'm so grateful to him for that. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else.
That's just perfect. And one of the things that I love about you is that, so, like, I can tell folks that before we do this, there's always like you and I, we meet a little earlier and we just, connect a little. And I always ask my guests, is there anything like off limits? And I just loved your response because you said to me, like, just basically go for it. And you said, like, I don't feel particularly an expert of anything except my own body and my own experience.
Mm.
And I just love that response. I just love that response. So why is it, like, in your opinion, Kirsten, like, what is your tell us a little bit about why maybe you felt like you needed to heal your relationship with your body.
I love that question. That's so wonderfully worded. Um, and I've been thinking about how I would answer a question like this, because it's hard to find where the starting point would be in
Yeah.
this journey for me.
Yeah.
Um, I would say I'm a person who grew up with a challenging relationship with my body and with food. I always had this nagging feeling that, you know, there was something off. There was something that didn't quite fit for me with my relationship with food, actually, fundamentally. And I think they're so interrelated, you know. And I also wanted to say I loved your interview with Sarah Pegram. That's the other one that I watched. I didn't bring that up earlier, but you know, she just speaks so wonderfully about, you know, this idea of weight and
Yeah.
weight stigma, and how we how we really judge ourselves based on our body size and limit ourselves. So for me, as a young child, I grew up as a dancer. That was my passion, and I think it was a lot of time in front of a mirror
Mm.
in not a lot of clothing, right?
Mm.
And in dance, it was where I felt most alive and where I sometimes felt the most embodied in a way,
Mm.
and free. But then also, I think there was the other element to it of beginning to judge my body at a very young age and evaluate it and evaluate its kind of correctness, right?
Mm. Mm.
And I went on to study ballet until I was about 16 years old. And so as I grew up in that dance culture, you know, it became more and more clear that my body didn't fit with the body that was expected or idealized in
Mm.
ballet culture, but then in our society more broadly.
Mm.
So so that's, I think, part of where this started for me. But I have a very clear memory when I was in graduate school and I was studying to become a therapist. And I was walking with a colleague of mine, someone who I really trusted, and I was telling him, you know, I said, you know, I don't feel like, I feel out of control around
Mm.
food, and I don't feel like I have a normal relationship,
Mm.
quote unquote normal relationship with food. And he just, you know, he listened, and but I could tell he just didn't understand. You know, there was just kind of like, I don't really know what you're talking about. He happened to be a male in a thin body, and
Mm.
I think for him, he just couldn't relate. Like it just didn't match. So this carried on until I was 35 years old. And by that time, I had discovered the work of Kirsten Neff, and I had been really into mindfulness and mindfulness-based therapy and all of that. In, and So I was really trying to work on applying this to myself and having a more compassionate relationship towards myself and my own body, and realizing that my all of my attempts to have a better relationship with food and my body were based on trying to control and
Yeah.
trying to restrict and trying to limit.
Yeah.
And so just, you know, long story short, chronic dieter, always on and off, sometimes losing weight, sometimes gaining weight, never anything really dramatic. I would say I probably was just a person with a disordered relationship with food,
Mm.
never crossed over into anything, you know, meeting eating disorder criteria, but just always very bothersome to me. Like I knew it was a source of suffering in my
Yeah.
life and something that I couldn't figure out how to like root out, you know? Um, and um, so I started developing a more compassionate relationship with my body through learning self-compassion and working on that, and realizing that I I didn't want to strive towards changing my body any longer. I didn't want to um, I didn't want to try to force it into some other way of being. That was harming me. That it wasn't giving any joy or pleasure or happiness to my life. And so from there, from developing this kind of more compassionate place, I happen to have this audio recording. Here, I'll show you. Of intuitive eating. And I had listened to this a number of years previously, and I remember listening to it and thinking like, oh yeah, that's mindful eating, and I've tried that and it doesn't work for me, like, because I'm broken around food. I can do it for a meal or for a day. Sure, I can eat very slowly and mindfully and feel full after like 10 bites and whatever. But on the day to day, it didn't translate. So I kind of like had it in my car and forgot about it. And then one day, I don't know why, I popped it in my player and started listening to it. This was about 4 years ago. And it was like everything that they were saying. The authors are Elise Resch and Evelyn Tribole. They're two dietitians, anti-diet dietitians, and they developed this intuitive eating approach. And it was like everything they were saying was like speaking directly to my experience with food and the challenges that I had faced for my whole life. And it suddenly all just fit together and clicked. And so it was kind of like a beginning, like, aha moment for me. And at the time, I wasn't on a quote unquote diet, but I had come across like a list of like, 10 foods like that, you should never eat or something like that. So I decided, okay, these are the foods that I often feel really out of control around. So I'm just not going to eat them. I'm going to leave them alone, and I can eat whatever I want, just not these like 10 things. And so I had this idea of like, I'm not on a diet. I don't want a diet. I don't want to change my body. And I'm listening to the intuitive eating recording, and it's talking about all these different ways that we restrict our eating. And the light bulb goes off of like, actually, I am. I am on a diet. We don't call it a diet anymore. Now we call it lifestyle changes or, intermittent fasting or whatever, all of these different approaches that are rooted in dieting and diet culture that we don't call dieting anymore. So I had to get really honest with myself, was this really serving me? And I had done this so many times, on and off the restriction, and the moment that you stop, or at least in my experience, the moment that I stop, I just, go right back to feeling out of control again, I couldn't honor my fullness. I was scared of being hungry. This was like my whole life of not really being able to figure out why. And as soon as I listened to this intuitive eating and came to be really honest with myself that the restriction just wasn't working. And I had already, started to really have that foundation of viewing myself from a more compassionate lens. I think it just opened me up. And funny enough, I think that was around, maybe 3 or 4 months before I went to my first ACT boot camp training. And discovered ACT. And I sat there in the ACT boot camp, and, it was just more light bulbs going off around. And for me, it was like I had just had this, realization of the power of changing my relationship with food and moving towards becoming an intuitive eater, which I think is an ongoing process, something that I'm still working on. But ACT for me was, like, oh, this is my home now. This is my theoretical home in my professional work, and it just fits so perfectly with everything that I like, that my own personal experience and what I felt like worked in the therapy room as well. So from the very beginning of like learning ACT, I had this idea of, wouldn't it be cool to combine these things, and how much intuitive eating really fits into the ACT model. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I'm really interested in and excited about, and I would love to see, you know, like more research around and more practitioners as well.
Wow. Like I'm like ugh. People send the hearts now. Like this is like send the hearts because this is like you are so brave, Kirsten, coming on here and speaking to something that so many people out there can relate to. I just love like how you are bringing your own personal story to the table here. And this is a
Thank
top
you.
like I can sometimes I'm kind of ready to pull off my own like when I look at the messages that is being that and humans, and sometimes I think women in particular, you have to be slim but have big
Yes.
breasts and curves. You have to be toned, but not too because then you're like,
Right.
then you're
I wouldn't
aggressive
want
and
that.
you're a kind of man. You have to be assertive, but not too much because then you are a bitch. You have to be nice, but not too nice because like how the like it's just so difficult to navigate in and like
Hmm.
it's I think that so many of us we're being taught not to like our own bodies, and we
Mm.
see this in little people like
Mm.
most of us remember like when we were little and there was before caring about what we looked like, and then there was like the knowing that, oh my god, this is not right. And I just
Mm.
want to I want to scream of the top of a mountain, and if there was something that we could do to change this. I want it. I want this to change, and
Me too. Me
you
too.
are here, uh, speaking about that change, and I love that. And so, what were you telling your body? Like, what was the story that
Mm.
you were telling yourself about your body?
So many things.
Mm.
You know, I would say the piece that stands out to me the most is like the fraught relationship with my belly, you know? And it's like, that's just, you know, one element. But for me, you know, we talk about these, like you were saying, these unrealistic, you know, physical, even personality expectations, right? Of the ways that we are given this message of how we need to act, how we need to look, that we should never age, right? Don't have
Mm.
any wrinkles, no gray hair. Like so many components of how to be good and how
Yeah.
to be in a good body. And so for me, it related a lot. Like one area was my belly. And, you
Ah.
know, from ballet, it even, you know, it was always suck it in, you know, you better hold it in, suck in your belly, right? And that was part of like the form and the figure that you're supposed to have. And I think that that's, you know, very much a part of that like thin ideal, right?
Mm.
Flat tummy. And
Mm.
that was never my tummy. I always had a round belly,
Mm.
and I felt at war with it. I hated it. I wanted it to disappear, you know.
Mm.
I imagined in my mind like, you know, liposuction, you know, like the fat just getting sucked out of it. Like I would have these sort of fantasies about if only this part of my body was different, I would be what happier. I would be at
Exactly.
peace with my body, at peace with myself. I would, you know, suddenly not criticize myself or judge myself the way
Yes.
that I do.
When the belly is gone,
So
I'll be happy.
yeah,
All,
when the
all,
belly's
all will
gone,
be
I'll be
good.
happy, right?
Yes.
All will
Yeah.
be good in the world.
Yeah.
And one of the things that folks in the, you know, like body liberation and fat acceptance community kind of talk about, or even I think just powerful in realizing the futility of that, of like reaching for that body acceptance and changing, you know, our bodies, is like look back at a picture of yourself, you know,
Yeah.
um of a time when your body was different and maybe it did conform. You know, if I look back at a picture of myself and I think about what was my mentality then, you know,
Mm.
how did
Mm.
I feel about my body when I was 16
Mm.
and had a very different body than I do today?
Yeah.
And I hated my body. I thought it
Yeah.
was bad. I thought it looked terrible. I thought it was fat. I
Yeah.
thought it was ugly. All of these really harsh beliefs
Yeah.
and messages that I gave to myself.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I was constantly, and I think it's something that we all so easily fall into, and I still do to this day, but I just remember how powerful it was at the time of constantly comparing. Am I larger than this person or am I
Oh,
smaller than them?
yeah.
Clearly, there's all the people out there that are way smaller than me and they're all
Mm.
way better.
Mm.
But, the people who were not in the thin bodies, was I the same size as them? Was I
Mm.
larger than them? Was I smaller than them? And I don't know why. I think it just really spoke to me of, how worthy am I as a
Yeah.
person is like
The
what I
power,
was really wanting.
the power of comparison, right? Like we compare and then we despair. uh,
Compare and
we come
despair.
just
Yeah,
compare
that's
and
a good
despair,
one.
and I think this is so interesting, like the way we talk up, like the way we view our bodies and how early it starts and all of these messages.
Hmm.
And so what would you like, one of the thing I'm going to ask you a question about like what would be your take on this. I was recently interviewed for something where I think I was given like 2 minutes of airtime in kind of this radio show or something, and I was talking about body acceptance, and either I was not communicating it very clear or something went wrong because the people on the radio kept saying, "So are you saying we're just supposed to stand in front of the mirror and tell ourselves that we're beautiful and fantastic?" And I was like, "That is not where that's not what I'm saying." Because what happens when we do that, when we stand in front of the mirror and say to ourselves, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." Well, at the same time, we are awakening a gospel choir of, singers saying, "No, you're not." So it kind of doesn't have that effect. So we're not saying, "Tell yourself you're beautiful," but what we are saying, treat yourself as if you are and treat yourself kindly. And what would be like, so if somebody says, "Well, Kirsten, am I just supposed to tell myself that I'm beautiful then? Am I just supposed to say that this belly is perfect?" What would be your take on that?
Yeah, I want to answer this like two ways. So
Do it.
one is, yeah, one is like where I came to, I think,
Mm,
with my belly because it's been a journey.
yeah.
And I think first we have to start with awareness, right? We
Yes.
have to start with getting curious and lifting that layer of judgment allows us to do that. So I really see that compassionate stance and developing a more compassionate relationship with our bodies as like a starting point for
Yes.
changing that relationship and and dropping that war kind of
Yeah.
feeling that I've had for a long time personally.
Yes.
So, you know, it doesn't certainly start with loving loving my belly. Like that's not where I just, flip the switch and boom, that's where I'm at. It started with awareness of the harm,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
the impact on me, on my well-being, on my sense of okayness, on my sense of worthiness, and my sense of value as a person that I placed it on whether or not my belly was a certain shape
Yeah.
and a certain size.
Yeah.
And once I could really see that clearly and really see this is causing harm to me
Mm,
and it's unnecessary harm. It's harm that I can choose to do something about and transform. It's not something that I have to be like a passenger on this bus, and carry around with me and beat myself up around for the rest of my life. So starting from that place of I can work on consciously seeing that judgment and seeing the harm that comes from it, and then inviting in just a little window of kindness. So, like, something that I noticed even that I was doing the other day was I was on my computer doing something and I looked down at my belly and I automatically like sucked it in,
oh.
and then I thought, well, that's weird,
Mm.
because I'm working on relating to my whole body with kindness. So what would it be like to try that again? And
Mm.
so I said, I'm going to relax. I'm going to let out my belly and now look down at it. Right. And just notice it in a neutral kind of way. Right.
What was that
And
like?
without it, it felt, it felt freeing. It felt like I could unhook that automatic response of, this shouldn't be here. This needs to be in. This needs to be different. This needs to be eliminated, you know? And there's also an element of allowing ourselves to take up space, like physical space, mental
Yes.
space, and I think that the message often for women, but for all people of all genders with the thin ideal is be smaller
Yeah.
and almost like take up less space, please,
Yes.
Um, and I think there's a way of like recognizing that, like letting out the belly and
Yes.
just witnessing it and just noticing it in a non-judgmental and in a neutral way, like, there it is, there's my belly,
Yes.
this is what it looks like as I'm sitting here, of I'm allowed to exist and I'm allowed to take up space, like there's that level of permission giving there.
Yes, you are. And you know what moves me to tears is so much like this is like, oh my God, you're oh, I love this. And Kirsten, what one thing that so we want to like pause and just see like what was it that you were doing and what was the advice in there? You said notice first, like the awareness that this is happening, the awareness of the war and letting go of that war, and then you said inviting a little like a little tiny window of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are
Mm-hmm.
so pragmatic, tangible tips and tricks, something that we can, like, this is hard and it is doable. And I love this example. Like, I'm moved to tears hearing you talk about, like, the way you noticed that your belly went in and then you choosing to let it out, giving yourself permission to take space. And the thing is that this is what I find so important. Like it's so empowering to hear this because every time you do this, every time we hear about this, Kirsten, like you're not only giving space to you, you're giving space to everybody who's watching this. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
as like you are right now impacting so many people by sharing this with us because every time we take up space and we give ourselves permission, we allow others to do the same. And I think that is
Mm-hmm.
so empowering.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah, and I think there's a
blown
way in
away by
which
you.
thank you, Rick. You're so kind, so sweet. I think there's a way in which we don't even realize, um, like a byproduct of
Mm.
focusing so much, right, on like, oh, it should be like this, or I want to appear like that, is like that's taking away mental energy from
Yes.
other things that we could putting our attention on.
Yeah.
I was listening to an interview that Evelyn Tribbley did with Dan Harris, and she was talking about how, how when we're in a fraught relationship with food and judging ourselves constantly for what we're eating, and we're tying foods as good and bad, and so when we eat them we're either good or we're bad, and how that can translate into like really disconnecting us from the
Yeah.
world around us, from the people that we're eating with, right? We're going
Yes.
out to dinner, but instead of being able to talk to people and focus on the conversation that we're having, we're in our heads about like, ooh, should I eat this? Should I finish that? How much
Mm.
calories are in this? Is this a forbidden food or not? Oh, was this on the list that I made of like the 10 foods I shouldn't be eating? And so I think it expands for me, beyond like thoughts about my body, and for so many years thoughts about food as well.
I love what you're saying. Like it takes away the focus of other
Mm-hmm.
things that are so important to us. And also, I think sometimes oh, and maybe a lot of the time we're sending a message like when we are monitoring the food, when we are sucking in our bellies, when we are doing all of that, we're also then showing others that that's what you're supposed to do. Like we're kind of feeding into that story about that is how we all
Absolutely.
should look and do and etc.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's
We're part of that culture, right? Of
exactly,
judgment, of moralizing bodies and eating and all
exactly.
of these things.
And one of the
Mhm.
things, like I think, well, I'd sure hope, like when I'm no longer here, I and people will, somebody will stand in my grave. This is kind of morbid, but I hope that people won't, think about the size of my breasts or how big my ass is. Uh, I hope that there's something else I will be remembered for, like the love that I gave or the compassion that I gave or how caring I was or something like that. And it's just so interesting to put it, I think, in that perspective because I sure to hope. I hope that people won't remember me for my size or for my
Size.
beauty and for what I ate or didn't eat and for how controlling and how much space up space my belly took. And it's just so interesting how we get sucked into that story and into that kind of track of on controlling that. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, often, it's other, it's qualities that we value. Uh, it, I, I think this is so interesting
Yeah.
and it's a difficult conversation. I've seen so many clients where I have actually, well, this is context specific or taken out of context, but where I have kind of written or drawing, great tomb, like what do you say, gravestone, and says
Mm-hmm.
here is Helen, and she weighs like 40 kilos and something like that. To to mirror the fact that all that you are chasing now is a number on the scale. And is
Mm-hmm.
that what you want to be remembered for? And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is,
Mm-hmm.
it's so important for us to remember or to connect with what is it that is important. And our bodies, I think, should be important to us. And well,
Right.
doesn't well, I don't want to give another message that it should be important, but there's so many ways to care for your body in a
Mm-hmm.
loving and kind way.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart to see the way that we are caring for our bodies and the way that we are controlling our bodies and the
Yeah.
way that we're
And
talking
sometimes
about our bodies. Abusing our
abusing our bodies.
bodies,
Yeah.
yes, and
Punishing
hiding
and
them.
hiding. Mm-hmm. That
Yeah.
was one of the aha moments that I had when I listened to the intuitive eating recording was uh, a statement where they were talking about, people eat food for a lot of different reasons. And when people have a really, you know, challenging relationship with food, one of the reasons can even be eating for punishment.
Yeah.
And it just rang true for me of like, oh yeah, I know what that's like of, feeling so out of control and then just eating for punishment of like, I deserve this feeling, I deserve this discomfort, I deserve this um, you know guilt, right?
Oh.
That comes with eating in a disconnected way, right? In a
Mm,
totally not attuned and not caring way, right?
mm,
It's the opposite. And that was a moment of really realizing I want to change this and I can
yeah.
change this.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
noticed you said
yeah,
a while ago, you said like, I am broken with food.
yeah, yeah, right.
Mm,
That's how I felt. I'm
mm,
broken and I felt hopeless. I felt really stuck. Um, and I think that's one of the reasons that, despite all my imposter syndrome and nerves with coming and talking to you, that I overcame that or did this anyway. I don't know if I overcame it, but I'm here.
mm,
Is because it, like, I grieve for that person that I was, and the beliefs that I held and the despair that I felt through my life.
mm,
And I'm so grateful that I was able to change that and the factors that came in my life to allow me to do that. And I think that that's really where the passion comes from, is I want others to know that you can, if you feel that way, you can change that. And there are ways to do that. And they work. I just
And
had a client who she's lives in a larger body and has for her whole life, and you know, a lot of struggle and chronic dieting and really harmful ways of treating her body as a result. And you know, one of her beliefs was like, you know, I could never have certain foods just freely available to me, because I will only eat them in a very like dysfunctional way. You know, I will overeat them. I'll go to them, you know, when I'm emotional and all of these things. And she's worked really hard over the past year or so of really nourishing her body, taking care of it, feeding it regularly. Like, we've worked on these really fundamental things to transform her relationship with food. And we talked about this belief again, and the rules and the rigid thinking around it. And she decided, I'm gonna buy ice cream, and I'm getting two kinds, and I'm put it in the refrigerator. And she would eat it after a meal, and she didn't gorge on it. She didn't eat the entire carton as she believed that she always would. Suddenly it was different. And she ate it for like every day. And then one day it was still there. She ran out. She bought more. She gave herself unconditional permission to have more. And one day she was like, I don't feel like eating ice cream now. And it just and the amazement, you know, that comes from that, and then the freedom is just like so powerful. And she said she just feels like there's just so much enjoyment of like this almost.
oh, we can't hear you now. Oh,
Oh,
you're back. You're
am I
back. We
back?
can hear. Yes, you're
Okay,
back.
that's weird. It cut out. So just this amazement and disbelief of like, it's the same food. I'm still me, but
Yeah.
now I don't have this fraught relationship with it anymore.
And there's something so empowering about what you're saying about like giving yourself permission to eat
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to eat, and to explore. I would say like also explore, what do I like? What tastes good? Like,
Yes.
when do I like it? When
Right.
and you know, changing the function from punishment and restriction and control
Mm-hmm.
to curiosity, to, you know, mindfulness about tasting different
Mm-hmm.
tastes and
Right.
touching different, you know, textures and
Yes.
etc. And I find that to be so empowering when clients kind of get that, like that shift, that you
Yeah.
can eat whatever you
Yeah.
want, you are free, you have permission, and finding a new way to be in
Yeah.
this world that is more about um, celebrating your body at whatever size. I had
Yeah.
one comment.
And I think one of the things.
Yeah, go on, go on.
Go ahead.
No, you go. You go.
Oh, I was going to say, I think one of the things that develops is a sense of that we can trust our bodies. Like, I started to realize that I didn't have to fear hunger, that if I honored hunger, if I responded to it with
Hmm.
taking care of my body and eating what felt good for my body, that I could trust that, and I could and I and I didn't have to be afraid. And
Hmm.
we can develop this kind of new trusting relationship with our bodies and with the cues of our bodies, right? That, hey, I actually need some nourishment right now, and you can provide it to me. And there's this kind of reciprocal relationship between ourselves and our bodies.
Oh, I love that. Like trusting the body knows, and if you kind of follow
Yes.
its lead, yeah.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
what I was going to say before is that I spoke to somebody who kind of came to me and said, so who thought I was all about body positivity, which in a way I like, kind of I am, but this person feared that does that mean if I accept, I'm more about body acceptance than body positivity, uh, and kind of not fighting your body and being, I'm more about body compassion if that was ever a,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anyways, this person said, or this person feared, so if I accept myself fully, does that mean I just let go and lie on the couch and stuff myself in wine and chocolate? And we had to kind of work on this because accepting oneself and accepting that you're large or not large, or whatever you are and however much space you take up, acceptance is not about then letting go and just like
Mm-hmm.
disconnecting from the body.
Right.
It's complete.
Right.
I
Getting further distanced, right?
Exactly. And so I know what I answered, but what would your answer to that? So let's say I said that to you. I said, Kirsten, does that mean that accepting oneself is just like, okay, I give up. I'm just gonna be fat for the rest of my life. What would be your take on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say that it's hard to answer because in a way accepting our bodies means trusting that that it can determine the right size and shape for being optimally healthy and taking care of us. And so our job is to make sure that we're doing that, that we're taking care and responding to the needs of our bodies. And our body's job is to, to receive that care and to settle at a size and a shape that is right for us. And, a lot of times we'll say this with intuitive eating that we don't know as someone changes their relationship with food. We don't know. Does that mean your body will become larger? Does that mean it will be smaller or stay the same? What we do know is that people who are able to maintain a more intuitive relationship with food and eat in an intuitive way and in a less restrictive way tend to maintain their weight. It doesn't fluctuate and it doesn't change. And that's actually really important because even though we place so much value in this culture on thinness and on health being tied to, a certain body size and shape, what we actually know is that weight cycling, that change going up and down, is harmful to our health, and is more associated with problems with our heart and with higher morbidity rates and these kinds of things. So kind of giving information to people, and letting them decide, is this something that you want to embark on? How does this sound to you? How does it align with your values? And honoring their own readiness. And if it feels really scary, actually validating and honoring that too, because I was scared shitless of giving myself permission. Right? That was what all the control was about, was I thought, if I give myself permission to eat, I'll never stop and my body will grow and it'll just balloon out to like, I don't know what, but I just thought it would never stop. It would never stop expanding, and that fear of taking up space and that fear of feeling more and more out of control just fed the restriction. So I think we have to honor that it is really scary, and that also for people living in larger bodies, there's legitimate reasons that people want to live their life in a smaller body because there's so much weight stigma, in our culture, in our society, and people really do get mistreated. I think it's one of the last areas where it's like considered acceptable to mistreat people is because they're in a larger body, and people think all the way from like being in school, that's one of the main reasons that children get bullied, unfortunately, all the way to adulthood, and it's really sad that that's something that we find acceptable as a reason to mistreat people.
Yeah.
And then in our healthcare system, there's so much weight stigma as well. So I think really coming from that place of compassion for people who fear, living their lives in a larger body and what that means about how they'll be treated in our world as well.
I love this compassionate stance, and having compassion for that, having compassion for the struggle, having compassion for the fear, having compassion for the battle, and actually you said something similar before, like the first step might not be to change everything, but the first step is to stop and notice and then have
Mm-hmm.
compassion for whatever there is, and then choosing maybe to let go of that struggle and, and invite kindness instead. And this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is the important message, this is doable.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It is.
regardless of the size, having compassion and letting go of that struggle is doable. It's something we
Yeah.
can all do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm gonna look down for a moment, Kirsten, because I
Okay.
want to check the comments here.
Sure.
So let's see if there are people here. Oh, I see there's a lot of, I just wanted to, so that you know that people are with you right now. Um, so Andreas says, I found myself in this story. Yes,
Mm.
the beginning of compassion is the awareness of harm, says Judith. Hi, Judith. Agata is sending us hearts. Judith, letting my belly out as you speak. Like you gave all of us permission to let our bellies out, and Judith did that. I'm just like, I'm ready to cry.
Mm. Mm.
Francesca says, I always love the way you talk, Kirsten, so open, so beautifully, and can relate so much. Thank you for reporting your experience to people. I know
Mm.
Francesca works with um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
body acceptance as well, body compassion.
Yes.
Denise says, it's so nice that you connect accepting your body with giving yourself the permission to take space and to give yourself permission to be. Helen, hey Helen says, taking up space, that's something I will practice with curiosity indeed. Mary says,
Wonderful.
our lives becomes way smaller the more we focus on becoming 2% smaller. I love that.
Yes. I
Uh,
love that.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Judith again says, the idea of being afraid of our own bodies is absurd, isn't it? And yet so common. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny says, I agree with that. And let's see how much you think the dieting is connected with perfection. So this is a question from Magdalena.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thank you, Magdalena, for asking this. Says, how much do you think dieting is connected with perfectionism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we know that for people who go on to develop full-blown eating disorders, that there is a higher rate of perfectionism,
Mm,
perfectionist thinking
mm,
associated as a personality and kind of characteristic, a temperament trait. So yeah, I definitely think, and we know that dieting is a risk factor for developing an eating disorder. So
yeah.
I definitely think there's a relationship there, right? That perfectionistic thinking, the all or nothing thinking, right? The
Mm,
kind of, okay, I'm good if I do this, I'm bad if I do that. And so just drawing this clear line and not really having room for that gray area. What it brings to mind for me is, part of the journey with intuitive eating in my own life has been allowing room for those difficult experiences with food
yeah.
where I do eat to the point of discomfort,
Mm,
or I eat something that I know isn't feeling good in my body, but I'm like eating it anyway, or eating in a mindless way, things like that.
mm,
And, you know, making compassionate space for that as well, right? And not adding on that layer of guilt and judgment around, oh, now I've blown it, now I've messed up,
mm,
right? Because that's
mm,
also very much part of that diet mentality of like either you're on the diet or you've blown it and you're off and now you're
mm.
just fucked up and just, they call it the last supper kind
Yeah.
of phenomenon, when just go for it and
Yeah.
get more and more disconnected. So when we notice that, oh, I just ate way past fullness, and not judging that as like, okay, now I've eaten in a disconnected way. So that means, I'm bad now. I
Mm,
deserve this kind of self-flagellating, critical view of myself, and saying, okay, that happened. How can I learn from that?
mm,
What were the factors involved there? And
mm,
actually meeting that experience with a compassionate, more curious, kind of understanding mindset, so that we can kind of continue to move forward, and not in a way of like, okay, well, I'm never going to do that again, because I don't know. I don't know what's to come. I don't know what factors I'm going to be facing or what vulnerabilities, but what are the ways that I can, use the skills that I've learned and take care of myself and come back to, no matter what happens, I'll be here for myself, and I'll be willing to meet that experience with more of an element of kindness than in the past.
Oh, I want you to say that again. No matter what, I'll say that again. Can you say that again?
No matter what happens, no matter what I eat or how full I get or how fat I feel, I'm willing to meet that experience with kindness and compassion and not judgment for myself.
Yes, I love that. And you even said, I will be here.
I'll be here. Mm-hmm.
I'll be here and I'll meet it with kindness and
Mm-hmm.
compassion. I think that is so, so powerful. Um, Here's one more question for you from our very own and my Carrie Tani says, love that. We love that. How so Denise says, how do you think about the function of struggles with our body in relation to the wish to be accepted by others? So there's something about uh being accepted by
So,
others. What's your take on that,
so much.
Kirsten? Yeah.
Yeah. The way I've worked with it is recognizing, again, like, wanting to be accepted is
Hmm.
completely natural and normal. That belonging, Steve Hayes talks about it, right?
Hmm.
The need for belonging, and how that's just a basic human need, and
Hmm.
we can't actually function as humans without it. We're interdependent
Hmm.
beings, right?
Hmm.
So recognizing, yeah, this is something that I'm striving for, but I get to choose how I go about seeking that belonging, how I want to kind of work towards feeling more connected to people, and is striving in this way, right, to conform or to try to meet some kind of external standard, is that working for me?
Hmm.
Do I feel more of a sense of belonging the more that I strive? Because I know for myself, I felt like more and more and more of an outsider, right? More broken, more like I'm never going to meet that standard. My body doesn't conform. My body doesn't look like that.
Hmm.
And so really getting honest with ourselves of, is that is that getting me the approval that I'm believing that it will?
Hmm.
Um, and I think also for ourselves, really owning the fact that sometimes we perpetuate this harm, right? By commenting on other people's bodies, right?
Exactly.
And giving compliments. Oh, you look like you've lost weight. Oh, you look so
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Have you lost weight? You look thin, you look sleek, you look fit,
Yes.
whatever. And
Yes.
that actually, a lot of people with eating disorders have commented to me that this is one of the ways in which their disordered eating started,
Yes.
was with these kinds of comments.
Yes.
And we don't know why someone is in the body that they are. We don't know
No.
how they, quote unquote, achieved that body. It could be they're sick, right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
could be that they have an eating disorder. It could be that this is their genetic makeup and they've always been in a thin body. So by commenting on bodies, we're perpetuating that
Yes.
idea that you will be accepted if, right? A conditional level of acceptance. So I think, all of us owning that piece is also really important. And
Like
for myself, committing to do better.
the way you're talking, Kirsten, is it strikes me. I speak with a lot of humans regardless gender identification, and lately I've been working a lot with people who identify as women, and there's something about the way we speak. And I'm finding this inside the way you're speaking, like you're saying that I get to choose. You're
Mm,
saying that I give myself permission to, etc. Like I just wanted to point to the fact that the languaging you're using is so inspiring and it's so empowering. And regardless again of gender identification, I I I just want to say I love that people are watching you this very moment because again, if we can adapt more of that, if we can adapt more of not knowing that we get to choose, like, and then fill in the blanks, but we get to choose that we can choose kindness, that we can choose compassion, that we can choose to let go of the struggle, that we can choose to take up space, that we can let our bellies out, we can let our breasts down, that we can,
Yes.
we can give ourselves permission to do all of that, and that we can actually also we can know our play, we can know how we can contribute or not contribute to the story by choosing to maybe not comment on other people's bodies and slimness and all of that all the time. I just like whenever this is finished, I hope you come back into the comments because people are sending you love. Keep sending love in here. And so so before you answer Denise's question, and she says, loving the answer, just so you know that.
Oh, thank you.
It's very inspiring and it's very empowering. Uh, and so we're coming kind of to the end
Hmm.
of this. And so I am guessing that people want to connect with you. So Kirsten, you're in this, like, this is live stream inside of the
Yes.
Impact Face group. Kirsten, you're in the group as well. And again,
Yes.
I'm inviting people, if you're with us now, if you see this afterwards, send the love, because Kirsten is donating an hour of your time to empower and to send kindness for everybody, say every
Yes.
human and everybody out there. Where can people find you? Like if they want to
Yeah.
connect.
Um, I have to admit, I don't use social media all that much. So the best way, you can email me. My email is kqsmft@gmail.com. And I do have a website. It's fulllifetherapy.org. So you're welcome to connect with me there as well. And yeah, I'm happy to connect with others who are passionate about these areas, and we put it together a panel for Worldcon this year with Sarah Pegram and Jason Lillis and a bunch of other folks around these topics as well. So I hope to see people in person at Worldcon and get to continue the conversation.
And so I want to, so, and it's kind of unfair to ask you on air because this is going to be hard to, but I will, so just know that I will invite you back, and we'll of course talk about the healing of the relationship with the body. And I would ask you to come back for, and kind of the general theme would be empowerment and giving ourselves permission, because like listening to you, I was just mind blowing beyond all the wisdom regarding the body and the relationship with food. The empowerment piece in there was for me just mind blowing, and I'm just really inspired by you. People are
Thank you.
sending the love in the comments. I hope you go in and check the comments, Kirsten,
Yes.
and and allow yourself, give yourself permission to receive the love that is out there for you. Again,
Thank you,
I
Ricky.
cannot begin to say how grateful I am that you are. So I say this again, every time you give yourself permission, you give others permission. Every time you let your belly out, the rest of us have permission to let our bellies out. Every time you say that we get to choose and that we can choose kindness, you are then spreading this to all of us. And for that, I am so grateful.
Thank
So
you, Ricky.
grateful.
And I am so grateful to you for inviting me here and your warm invitation of like what lights you up was like just I couldn't resist responding, and I'm grateful to all of the teachers and the people who have dared to take up space and shared that through different communities, so that I've been able to go on this journey and take up space. So thank you.
Thank you for showing us you, the both the professional side of it and all the wisdom, and for being personal and vulnerable and letting
Mm.
out your belly with us. It's very, very touching. Like to see that all parts of you was just absolutely beautiful. So
Thank you.
Kirsten, we're going to close the bar. You and I are going to stand,
Yes.
we're going to clean up the bar. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for sending the love for this special guest. And thank you for being here and for all of the impact that you are making in this world for yourself and for the people that you serve. All right. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone.